by an ambulance. What is the thing? This is 911. We have a shooting victim. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, I just walked in. My wife, I believe she's been shot. It's got blood everywhere.
Okay, sir. Is she breathing?
No. Well, I think she's already dead.
Even while he made his call for help, David Temple knew his wife had no chance. She had taken a shotgun blast to the head.
She's dead.
Okay. Have you felt for her to have a pulse?
Yeah, she doesn't have one. She's gone.
She's what?
She's gone.
And there was also no hope for the baby that Belinda Temple was just weeks away from delivering.
We were looking forward to the baby. She was a wonderful mother.
David and his 3.5-year-old son, Evan, were now alone.
How did you tell Evan what happened to his mother?
I just laid down in the bed with him and told him that some bad men had broken into the house. And Mama's heart stopped. And she's going to be with Jesus, and she won't be with us anymore.
Suddenly, a single parent, David turned to his parents. Moving into their home, finding comfort in good memories.
Was it a happy childhood?
But wonderful, wonderful.
The Temple family was well respected in Katy, a Texas town near Houston.
Grew up very close to family. Uncle next door, grandmother 2 houses away. So very tight-knit, close family group.
David was a gifted athlete.
Anything you could do with the ball, we did it, and I played everything I could.
He became a star defensive linebacker for Katy High School.
The great ones always rise to the top somewhere during the course of a game.
Wade Luker coached a rival team in a nearby town.
We always had to assign 2 people to him to block him. He's a force to be dealt with when you played him.
Temple won a football scholarship to Stephen F. Austin University. On the field, he became known as the Temple of Doom.
He was a hustler on the field. I mean, he was always the first one to the football, but he was really a great leader.
Off the field, he was a bit of a romantic, especially when it came to an attractive phys ed major, Belinda Lucas.
She's just naturally God-given beauty, but on the inside she's prettier than she was, because she would do anything for anybody.
Before long, David asked Belinda's parents, Tom and Carol Lucas, for her hand.
That is very old-fashioned to ask for it. What did you make of that?
I made this is a pretty neat guy.
I didn't think young men did that in these days.
With her parents' blessing, David proposed to Belinda in the most sentimental setting he could imagine.
I took her down to the 50-yard line and got down on my knee and told her how much I loved her and asked her if she'd marry me.
They married and both ended up working with children. Belinda taught special ed at Katy High, where her husband had ruled on the football field.
She was such a great teacher because she loved kids and she understood the kids so well.
Debbie Berger, who taught in the same classroom, was a close friend.
She was a strong person, very direct, but yet very loving and warm.
A light bulb? That goes in my new lamp.
David landed a job in a nearby town, teaching and coaching alongside his old rival, Wade Luker.
Oh, I thought he was as good a coach as I ever worked with, and I've coached for 36 years. He'd take guys that maybe weren't as good, and he was always trying to bring their level up.
By all accounts, the Temples were both devoted to their son, Evan, and by January of 1999, the birth of their daughter was just 1 month away.
January 10th, we were a happy threesome as anybody in the country.
It was also the last weekend of Belinda's life. On Monday, January 11th, just like every day, Evan was in daycare while his parents were at work. But he was sent home early that day with a fever, and David came home to watch him.
Even he took a bath, made sure his temperature was good, and we just played and waited for Mom to get home.
When Belinda returned around 4 o'clock, David says she went upstairs to rest, and that's when he took Evan out to play.
We went to the park in our neighborhood, which we spent a lot of time at. He enjoyed being out, so that's where we went first.
After that, he says, they made their trip to the grocery store and then to the Home Depot, never imagining what awaited them at home. When they got back, Temple says he saw the broken back door, dropped Evan off at a neighbor's, then ran up the stairs and found Belinda's body sprawled on the floor of the bedroom closet.
when you have something like that traumatic happen in your life that you've never seen before, it's incapable of putting into words how you feel.
What were you told about the scene before you got there?
That there was a female been found dead in her closet with an apparent gunshot wound to the head.
Crime scene investigator Dean Holke was surprised that a burglar would be so violent.
How many burglars do you think walk around at late in the afternoon carrying a shotgun in broad daylight?
Holke followed the standard procedure and asked to test David's hands for gunshot residue.
Did you tell him what this was?
I explained it to him what it was for, yes.
Did he resist at all?
No, not at all.
David agreed to go with the police and give a statement.
Do you remember what was going through your mind at that point?
Totally numb, shock. Sometimes it feels like an eternity, and sometimes it feels like it went very quick. I can remember having trouble just walking out to the cruiser.
Belinda's parents got that phone call that mothers and fathers have nightmares about.
I dropped to my knees. I not only lost my daughter, I lost a granddaughter that I'm sure was beautiful as her mama, that I never got to see.
This was no ordinary crime scene. It affected even veteran homicide detective Tracy Shipley.
It was one of the few cases we have where you have a completely innocent victim. She had lived a low-risk lifestyle. She was a teacher, she was a mother, she was a wife. She didn't have any bad habits, and to find her dead in her house was very heartbreaking.
In the following days, Detective Shipley began canvassing the neighbors.
Pretty much got the same story from everybody. It was a typical house. They would see them out doing yard work. They looked very happy.
But the police would soon learn that one young neighbor lied about his whereabouts that day, and he had had a run-in with Belinda Temple before.
My wife, I believe she's been shot. It's got blood everywhere.
The night his wife, Belinda, was murdered in January 1999, David Temple told police he had no idea who did it.
Action, take one. I got the bag.
Everybody liked Belinda, didn't matter where she was.
But later he wondered about one of her students, the Temple's next-door neighbor, Riley Joe Sanders.
They had had several battles that I was aware of.
At the time, he was 16 and perpetually truant. Belinda had reported him to his parents.
Do you think he killed Belinda?
I honestly don't know.
Riley Joe Sanders told a reporter he was in school all day, but later admitted to the police he cut out to smoke pot with friends. He was known to use his father's 12-gauge shotguns, guns like this one, without permission. His friends had stolen shotguns a few weeks earlier, and Sanders was in the area around the time that other neighbors heard a sudden and startling noise.
I heard a loud boom, boom.
Growing up, Ed and Herman Roberts lived in the house behind the Temples.
This is Herman Roberts. He's 6 years old.
The police spoke with them shortly after the murder.
How many times did you hear that?
One.
I thought it was a gunshot. I was sure there was a gunshot.
But when exactly did the boys hear that bang?
Hello.
They happened to be watching Dr. Dolittle at the time, and 9 years later they remember the exact point in the film when they heard the sound.
Right there.
Right here. Stop it here.
That scene is 24 minutes and 50 seconds into the movie. With that information, police could calculate roughly when the boys heard that noise. They were dropped off here at the bus stop at about 3:45. They went home, did about 10 or 15 minutes worth of homework, horsed around a little, and started the video. That would mean, if the boys are correct, that the shot was fired at about 4:30. That was the time that David was out shopping. He and Evan were caught by a surveillance camera at that grocery store. Within days, police discovered that Riley Joe Sanders lied about where he was. They asked him to take a lie detector test. He agreed and failed at least twice. But there was no way to link any of the shotguns Sanders and his friends had to the crime, and there was no other evidence to put Riley Joe Sanders at the scene. What's more, the police had another suspect in their sights.
This is Belinda Temple's shoes that she was wearing, the pants, the actual glasses.
Homicide Detective Dean Holke was a crime scene investigator when the case began.
This is her cell phone, the cordless phone that was found in the closet.
He looked at the Temple's broken back door. Something about the way the pieces of glass fell seemed odd to him.
You would expect the glass to go in the direction of the break, yet the glass in this one was inside the house, further into the living room.
You take a picture of the glass?
Oh yeah, several.
He took a lot of pictures. And a lot of what Holtke saw that day made him wonder if a burglar had really broken into the home.
The TV was down on the floor, but it's not unplugged. You're there to steal a TV, you're first going to unplug it, right?
He started to think that the scene had been staged.
There's jewelry out in the open. Big, huge gold Southland Conference Championship football ring. That's a lot of gold sitting there.
And there was more.
It sounds bad. I know it looks bad.
Detectives were troubled to learn that David had become a little too close to a fellow teacher named Heather Scott. The popular football coach had neglected to tell the police just how popular he was.
We started emailing, flirting through the emails, talking just about going to happy hour, calling her sexy. It's nothing what I would call nasty or provocative.
Police questioned Heather twice. The first time she said, although she and David had never been alone, they had what she called a casual romantic relationship.
What does casual romantic mean?
Well, romance to me means moonlight, wine, maybe some candles, dinner.
But Detective Tracy Shipley took a second statement from Heather, given after Heather consulted a lawyer.
She said, I just need to explain our situation a little more. He was at my house for New Year's Eve.
And this time Heather said the relationship was somewhat more than casual.
She said that they had sex.
David admits he spent that New Year's Eve at Heather's apartment.
And what did you tell Belinda?
I told Belinda that I was going hunting with a friend.
But he insists Heather meant nothing to him.
Did you love Heather?
No.
At the time?
No.
So this was just a physical...
Totally physical.
You left your wife while she was pregnant to be with this other woman. You felt nothing for her?
I enjoyed the attention.
Were you happy with Belinda?
Very much. I loved my wife very much. Would have laid my life down for her. What I did was wrong.
But Heather's signed statement says that just 3 days before Belinda was killed, quote, David said something like, I think you know I have totally fallen in love with you.
She said that he used those words.
Yes.
I'm falling in love with you.
You know, I think I'm falling in love with you.
David denies saying that.
I didn't want to be with Heather. Heather knows that.
Whatever the relationship was, it was not a secret anymore. And David knew that put him under suspicion.
I knew there would always be a cloud there from what had happened, and people would have doubts.
3 months after the crime, a grand jury was convened, and in the end indicted nobody. Not Riley Joe Sanders, the neighbor who police all but dismissed as a suspect. Not David Temple, the man police believed committed the crime.
So how did you feel when you heard that they decided not to indict you?
You don't get any joy from knowing that you didn't kill your wife. She's still gone.
With no hard evidence connecting anybody to this murder, the case went cold, and David Temple got on with his life. He went back to teaching, and a year and a half later, he remarried. His new wife, Heather Scott.
You just kind of shake your head and think, I guess it wasn't a casual relationship.
So when did you actually fall in love with Heather?
It'd be hard to pick a date.
It's an important detail because no matter what the grand jury thought, investigators were convinced David fell in love with Heather before Belinda Temple was killed.
He no longer wanted his wife around, and he wanted Heather, and he was going to do everything he could to get Heather.
It's frustrating when you know all along of who did it and know that they're just walking around, moving on with their life, getting married, doing everything they've always done.
Detective Dean Holtke could do nothing but seethe as David Temple resumed his life.
People are like, there's no doubt he did this. Why can't y'all do anything?
Despite David's apparent alibi, the police had believed Temple was responsible for his wife Belinda's murder pretty much from day one.
Did I have an opinion that it was a staged crime scene? Absolutely.
But years passed, and still no one was charged with the crime.
Somebody's dragging their feet. They're not getting the job done.
Belinda's parents, Tom and Carol Lucas, suspected David after they learned he had betrayed their daughter. The Lucases did all they could to keep the case alive. They paid for a billboard next to a busy highway, and they took television crews to their daughter's grave.
Love you, babe.
But nothing changed until November 2004, more than 5 years after the murder, when a case in California caught the nation's attention.
He is charged with killing his wife, Lacey.
Guilty of the crime of murder.
Scott Peterson was convicted of killing his pregnant wife, Lacey. The Lucases saw parallels to their case and contacted the prosecutors once again. This time, the case landed on the desk of one of the toughest DAs in the nation.
I got it under control. I know what I'm doing.
Kelly Siegler.
I believe that David Temple was guilty.
With a record of high profile,
1, 2,
high energy,
3, 4.
and highly dramatic prosecutions.
Like you're mad, like you're afraid, like you can't stop.
This time, she had no murder weapon to work with.
You didn't have the gun.
No.
No incriminating fingerprints.
There is no DNA evidence.
And no eyewitnesses.
So what did you have against him?
A story that he told that never made any sense.
What didn't make any sense about it?
The story was, according to David Temple, at the very time he was out with his sick son, running errands that didn't need to be run, a random burglar just happened to break into his house and shoots Belinda Temple in the back of the head when she's 8 months pregnant, while David Temple is having an affair with the woman he was madly in love with.
Siegler has a theory. She believes Belinda Temple was killed around 4 p.m., about a half hour before David was seen by those surveillance cameras at the stores. Whatever the Roberts brothers heard around 4:30, Siegler says, it was not the fatal shot.
You think they heard anything?
I have no idea what they think they heard. They're good kids. I just don't think they know what they heard.
Besides, Siegler says, since Belinda was shot in the closet, the sound would have been muffled by the clothes. Once Belinda was dead, Siegler says, Temple went right to work, concocting his alibi.
David Temple made a sweep through the house and made an attempt to make the house look like it had been burglarized. He broke the glass in the back door, and then he took evidence to try and get himself on videotape to alibi himself as quickly as he could.
Siegler says Temple planned to be seen on camera, but what he didn't expect, she says, was to also be seen in a different, out-of-the-way part of town. A witness who recognized David from his glory days as a high school football star saw him here in his car.
Well, what do you think he was doing out there?
I think that's where he went to get rid of the shotgun.
But you never found the shotgun.
Do you know how many rice fields there are in Katy, Texas? And canals, and creeks, and ponds?
Kelly Siegler may not have had the gun, but she did have some new ammunition, some new evidence. After years of laboratory snafus and delays, a critical FBI report came back. Tests on David's jacket that was found in the bedroom showed traces of gunshot residue. Finally, Siegler had some forensic evidence. She took the case to a new grand jury and got an indictment. On November 29, 2004, nearly 6 years after his wife was killed, David Temple was arrested.
I dropped my son home from school like I did every day. And an officer pulled me over, handcuffed me, and put me immediately in the back of a detective's car.
And one of the detectives in that car was Dean Holtke.
You know what this is about, right? And he says, no, what? I said, Belinda. He's like, you got to be kidding me, man. That was like 6 years ago.
I never thought that I would be arrested, ever.
Temple says he's a devoted family man, despite marrying his mistress after his wife was murdered.
I have to ask you, did you kill her?
Of course not. Merry Christmas. You cannot be a good father to one child and take the life of another one. To me, that is impossible.
To go up against the hard-charging prosecutor, Temple turned to Dick DeGuerin.
I just intuitively could tell he didn't have anything to do with it.
A legendary Houston attorney, every bit as Texas tough as Kelly Siegler.
When I heard David Temple hired Dick DeGuerin, I'm going, geez.
The two lawyers had clashed many times before.
She's extremely aggressive.
But so is DeGuerin, who immediately goes gunning for what might be Siegler's best evidence, that gunshot residue found on Temple's jacket.
It's really junk science. The jacket could be expected to have gunshot residue because it's airborne. It could get on anything in that room, probably was on just about everything in that room.
Even before the trial begins, the judge agrees with DeGuerin and throws out the evidence.
I thought that we had won a major battle.
It's a setback for Siegler, but she remains confident.
Dick, if we don't have the gunshot residue, the case is just fine anyway.
So this is now a purely circumstantial case, and DeGuerin says circumstances point more directly to Temple's troubled teenage neighbor.
He was a rotten little juvenile delinquent.
Riley Joe Sanders.
Do you think Riley Joe Sanders killed Belinda Temple?
My opinion is that he's much more likely to have done it.
We checked out Riley Joe Sanders. There's nothing in the evidence that makes him a true suspect.
But DeGuerin believes Siegler is ignoring Sanders and is hell-bent on convicting David Temple.
Kelly Siegler came in and made chicken salad out of chicken feathers.
All rise.
The state of Texas versus David Temple is shaping up as the battle of the Texas Titans.
She wanted to win.
What does that say about David Temple?
Not that she wanted to see justice done. Where's the gun?
He got rid of it.
She wanted to win.
So who is David Temple? You're going to hear a lot about him in this trial. He's a man who grew up in Katy, Texas. He's a man who nobody ever said no to.
In October 2007, prosecutor Kelly Siegler unloaded her evidence against David Temple in front of a jury.
The defendant says to Heather Scott, "You know I'm falling in love with you." 3 days later, Belinda Temple was executed in the back of the head in the home where she lived with this man.
He got away with murder for nearly 9 years, she says, and that is long enough.
The only person in the whole wide world who had a motive to want Belinda Temple dead is this man who sits before you today. It was going to be a hard case to present. It was a circumstantial evidence case to the nth degree.
In his opening statement, attorney Dick DeGuerin comes out swinging.
The detectives focused on David. The evidence will show that they ignored other leads.
Blasting investigators for letting the real killer get away.
I mean, in your mind, was there enough evidence to take this case to trial?
I don't think so.
But Detective Dean Holke says the evidence shows David's claim that his house was broken into is impossible.
If the door is sitting in this position, closed and locked, and an intruder is going to make entry and break it out here, you would expect that the glass would be in that direction, in the direction of the break. Uh-huh. Exactly.
But you found it off to the left.
Yeah, well, we found it's more consistent with the door being already open and hitting it going into the living room.
And so you think what?
The door was open.
Well, that doesn't sound like forced entry.
No.
DeGuerin argues those pieces of glass flew out when David barged into the house looking for his wife.
David had to push it aside when he ran full bore into the house. And as he slammed it to the side, the shattered glass that was remaining in the door frame would have then been propelled out.
For 2 weeks, Siegler calls 23 witnesses who were not allowed to record any of their audio. DeGuerin has answers for everything. The witness who claims he saw Temple at that out-of-the-way intersection, DeGuerin says the man is mistaken about the date.
David had no reason to be coming down that road at that time, although David frequently drove on that road in other days.
How in the world did a burglar ever get past that dog?
Prosecutors insist an intruder could not get past Temple's dog, Shaka, who was in the yard. But DeGuerin says, in fact, Shaka was locked up.
Shaka was in the garage.
With the doors closed?
Sure.
DeGuerin insists there is no real evidence against Temple. And furthermore, he says, Siegler knows it.
Let me put it this way. I didn't think they played well together.
Judge Doug Shaver has his hands full. He has to keep the trial moving and keep the lawyers from each other's throat.
What was that like for you?
It was difficult. I believe someone could have said good morning, and the other side would have objected to it.
You've been up against DeGuerin before.
Too many times.
Has he ever beaten you?
No.
Proud of that.
Not really.
Really?
Not.
I would be.
Because he's that special?
Siegler continues to fight not just with DeGuerin, but with everyone on David Temple's side. especially one of the most reluctant witnesses.
She had been described to me as a very beautiful, sexy woman.
David's current wife, Heather.
And I couldn't believe how thin she was and how tired she looked.
David and Heather have always said their early relationship was not serious.
It was a brief fling.
But it complicated your job.
Of course it did.
Siegler doesn't buy it and grills Heather, who blurts out a less than flattering account of sex with David, saying it was, her words, not memorable.
That was just so, come on, so contrived. Nobody in the courtroom bought that.
When it's DeGuerin's turn, he launches an aggressive defense. He calls most of Temple's immediate family to paint a picture of David as a good father and a loving husband. He also calls the Roberts brothers to testify about that loud bang they heard when they were just children.
What happened?
I heard like this big boom, like boom.
What the Roberts boys did hear is they heard a gunshot, and when they heard the gunshot, David Temple was 6 miles away.
But DeGuerin believes the best witness for David Temple is David Temple himself.
He wanted to testify. I wanted him to. In my heart, I truly believe that David Temple is innocent.
So Temple takes the stand to plead his case. He has put himself in Kelly Siegler's crosshairs.
Were you afraid of Kelly Siegler?
No.
You weren't?
I'm not afraid of her. She's very aggressive. But I knew what was right.
But he knows it's a risk.
I look mean. I'm not. My eyes are sunk back in my head. You look like a football player. You look like you could be aggressive. You know, and some things work against you.
When the defense rests, DeGuerin hopes the jurors will look past David Temple's appearance and focus their suspicion on Temple's former neighbor, Riley Joe Sanders.
He was in trouble right and left when he was running around with a group of guys that burglarized places.
DeGuerin believes that Sanders and his friends may have staked out the Temple house.
They probably saw David leave. They go in, start stealing stuff, and Belinda, who's lying down upstairs, hears the break-in, and she shuffles off to the closet with the cordless telephone to call for help. They hear that because they're directly below there, and then they run up and kill her.
But Kelly Siegler tackles DeGuerin's theory head-on and calls Sanders to the stand as a witness for the prosecution.
And Riley Joe Sanders admitted, yeah, I smoked dope, yeah, I cut skull 100-something times.
He denies under oath having anything to do with the murder.
How do you know he was telling the truth?
You weigh it with all the other factors. He had no reason to want her dead.
But there was that polygraph.
How do you do?
The jury didn't get to hear all that evidence.
I know. How do you do?
I'm not going to talk about it if the jury didn't hear about it.
Well, would I be wrong in saying that he failed the polygraph?
The jury did not hear that.
I think that he failed the polygraph. Isn't that true?
I just think it's important for everyone to understand that that's not admissible evidence,
No,
and our jury did not.
I'm not arguing that, and
Okay.
I think most people know that it's not admissible evidence, but it's an investigative tool.
Right.
How did he do in the polygraph?
Not well.
Sanders declined to be interviewed, saying he didn't want to discuss false allegations against him. Kelly Siegler hopes Sanders will not distract the jurors from her case against David Temple.
He never said a word about
Excuse
the
me,
dog.
that's not the evidence. We objected and asked that she stay in the record.
But she knows better than to underestimate her rival.
Objection beyond the record.
He's a great lawyer. I don't really want to ever have to deal with him again.
I was worried. Kelly's extremely effective.
There was a lot riding on the trial, for him and for us.
All rise. Defense attorney Dick DeGuerin's job as he begins his closing argument,
Ladies and gentlemen,
is to focus the jury's attention on the boy next door.
there is more circumstantial evidence against Riley Joe Sanders than there is against David Temple.
He wants the jury to remember that Riley Joe Sanders lied.
At first, he denied having cut school that day. Why?
And he argues that while David Temple was wrong to be unfaithful,
it was a casual, romantic relationship.
He is guilty of nothing more than adultery.
The circumstances do not lead to the inescapable conclusion that David Temple murdered Belinda. They simply don't. If you have that reasonable doubt, you must voted.
The truth is in the details.
Prosecutor